Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, now we're joined by Mr. Orji, who is the Managing Director, Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you.
Interesting times for the country, as a matter of fact. Even the world, when we talk about oil prices, we know that that's the mainstay of our economy. That's dwindling now. And then talking about the SWF, many questions about our savings. Are we still saving at the moment?
Within the SWF or in general?
Within the SWF, first and foremost.
Well, I will say that since the initial transfer of capital, which was brought into the SWF actually in July of 2013, we haven't had any fresh capital transfer. So the SWF now consists of our initial $1 billion plus the profit that we generated in 2014. And some in 2015. So there hasn't really been much. There's not been any transfer of capital.
Is that going to, and to what extent will it put the projects that SWF is involved in jeopardy?
We have always anticipated a decline in oil price. And so the commitments we have made can be executed within the capital that we have at the moment. And most of that will be through co-investments. So when we made the commitment to certain projects, we were never going to underwrite the entire project. We're going to have other people partner with us in making those investments. So the challenge, obviously, with a sovereign wealth fund is if there's not much contribution coming in, it's always a very difficult business to run. But luckily for us, we've also had an asset allocation that allows us to have investments in things that generate immediate revenue, as well as investments in infrastructure that may not generate immediate revenue. So I think the business...
Let me pick the infrastructure part of it.
Yes.
And the questions that have been on for a while.
Yes.
What's the situation with the second Niger Bridge?
The second Niger Bridge is a project that is being done as a public-private partnership. And what does that mean? That means that the government will have its contribution and the private sector will have its contribution. So with regards to where it is today, the structure of the project is the government will contribute 30 billion naira for what will cost about 108 billion naira if you exclude waivers and duties. Now, if you include those, it'll be 117 billion naira. So what that means is that the private sector, including the Sovereign Wealth Fund, will be responsible for raising the rest of the funding. And so where our job at this stage is project development. And project development means making sure that the environmental and social impact analysis is done properly, that we have finished through a set of consultants, and we have got the approval from the Minister of Environment. Now, that is very important in order to attract foreign investors. Don't forget that the funding will come from both domestic and foreign lenders and foreign investors. In fact, we expect that a bulk of it will come from foreign investors. So which means certain things have to be done to a certain standard. Environmental social impact is one. Legal is another. The structure of the concession agreement, the structure of the project, the structure of the EPC contract, all of these things have to be advised properly. So project development takes time. Ideally, in some places, it can take up to 2-3 years to actually get to a point where, right, this project is ready for people to put their money in. So we're still project developing. And so, but at the same time, early works have started because the government can decide, use our contribution to start early works.
Oh, work has started?
Oh, yes, and it's
so
ongoing.
So where did the information come from that it was being reviewed?
I think that was clarified by the head of ICRC yesterday. I think I saw some misquoting of his comments. And the engagement with ICRC, which is the regulator for concessions, is still ongoing. The concession agreement has not been finalized, so some of those conversations are still ongoing with ICRC. But the government can choose to go ahead and start early works. And so as a consequence, the reality is before the private sector can participate fully and deliver the capital necessary, the government can choose to go ahead. And this is what is happening. And so we, as the investors, are also supervising that to make sure that it complies. So work is ongoing. A lot of the piling work in the water has been done. Some superstructure is going up. I think one of the television studios was there a few days ago and had on air what was going on. I was there myself on August 10th last. And yes, the work continues to go on.
Okay, so the three components of the SWF.
Yes.
Infrastructure fund, stabilization fund, and the future fund.
That is correct.
Okay, so at the moment, you talked about the infrastructure fund.
Yes.
What about the future fund?
Sure. So let's go back to the structure of the SWF. Of the $1 billion, this is how we structured it. 200 million is in stabilization fund. What that means is when the government needs money, they can come to us and we can provide that $200 million. That's how the law is written. The law says we must have at least 20% of that fund in the stabilization fund, which we did. The future fund is 40%, which is $400 million. I'm going to talk about how that is structured in a minute. An infrastructure fund is 40%, which is $400 million. That is all that we have in the infrastructure fund. The maximum we can commit to any one project is 25% of that amount, which is $100 million. So Second Niger will be much less, that will be less than that. But the maximum we can commit to any one project is $100 million. And I've been public to say we have actually, as a board, approved to commit $100 million to Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. So there's no one project that can...
When was that?
I went public about this last year.
Okay, so we expect to see work going on
we have a check for Lagos-Ibadan.
Okay.
Yeah, somebody else is leading the sponsorship of that. And we'll invest as an investor. We'll invest. Okay. Second Niger Bridge happens to be one where we are now leading the sponsorship of that. You know, so we'll invest and bring other people. So that's kind of how it's structured. Okay. The infrastructure bank is leading the sponsorship of the Lagos-Ibadan Express. Well, we've been in discussions with them for over 2 years, just to get it to a point where we can actually write our check, yes.
Yeah, because I was wondering, you know, if we do that, do we have to make the money back to the sovereign wealth fund, or is this something we just, you know, give and that's it?
We have to get it back. We're investors, and people need to understand this. We invest to earn a return. My job in this sovereign wealth fund is to actually keep the money safe, first of all, and earn a return. Your question becomes how. The answer is tolling. Let's be realistic about...
so every project you do, you must be able to make a return. You're not going to be dependent on the state to keep making contributions to the sovereign wealth fund.
No, we will not keep depending on the state to keep making contributions. Every project has to earn a return. Everyone. There are some projects that have a far more important social impact, and as a consequence, some of those projects we will end up allowing the social implication to be of more importance than the financial implication. So there are investments we've made. We've invested in a pipeline to make sure that power is generated through Calabar. We paid $100 million. We're making 10.5% a year on that investment. We could accept as low as 5%, 6% in some projects if we think the social implication is higher. Do you understand? So, but everything must earn a return. The business has to be self-sustaining.
So is this going to be structured on, I mean, is that how the sovereign wealth fund is structured?
Yes.
Everything must have a return?
Everything must have a return. Everything must have a return. Except for some aspects where we say there's a social infrastructure aspect where the return could be very low. We can accept that. But everything has to have a return. It's not a grant. It's not a charity.